Oh, there is fire on the mountains, and no one is surrounding. Oh, yes. One day the river will overflow. Ain't there'll be nowhere for us to go. And we will run, wishing we had put out the fire. Oh, for there is fire on the mountain. Yeah, yeah. And there is nobody. Oh, there is fire on the mountain. And no one is surrounding. So, yeah. There is fire in Africa.
There is fire on the mountain. There is a fire in Africa. Oh my goodness. Welcome to Undeniably African. I am the Queen, and it is both a blessing and an honor to have you on this gorgeous Sunday afternoon, coming to you from the world's greatest city, Harare, and the world's greatest nation, Zimbabwe. I don't know where you are tuning in from, but if you haven't visited Zimbabwe, come on, it's 2019. It's time to get it together. Time to pack your bags and come to Zimbabwe. Joining us in studio is a very incredible man. Apologies, a very incredible king that is joining us for the very first time. King Nyashadzashe Chikumbu. King, welcome to Undeniably African.
Well, thank you for having me. It's truly an honor being here.
Thank you so much. I'm going to need you to move your microphone a little bit closer to you.
Closer to me like this.
Perfect.
Right.
Well, King, thank you so much for joining us as part of the Undeniably African Book Club. For those of you that are joining us for the very first time, the Undeniably African Book Club is our commitment to increasing an appreciation and consumption of African literature. So it varies. Some days we have authors come in studio for an online book reading, so we learn more about who they are and their stories. And today, for the very first time, we're having a guest book review where we have anybody who wants to come, whether you're a book club or an individual that wants to share some incredible African literature. So, King, there are so many people that are like, okay, when are you guys going to start? So let's get right to it. But before we discuss the book we're talking about today, tell us a little bit more about who Nyashadzashe, King Nyashadzashe Chikumbu is.
Okay. Well, King Nyashadzashe, I actually like the title chief more than the title king.
I like that.
Because me as an artist, as a writer, right? I'll begin. I'm Nyashadzashe Chikumbu is a writer, a poet, an editor, and a book reviewer.
Okay.
So from the artistic perspective, I usually like to associate myself with the title chief because it gives me room to be in between, in the world. I'm not this single authoritative personality, but I'm stuck between, whereby I can see what's coming from this side, I can see what's coming from this side, from back and forth, and I can equally, put my comments and show this side what this side doesn't say. So yeah, basically that's me. Nyashadzashe Chikumbu is a writer, poet, editor, a book reviewer, and I'm also the director for Mystery Publishers, which is based in Kenya. It's an independent publishing house which focuses on speculative fiction and pop literature.
Oh, fantastic. Well, first of all, King, thank you for that. That you acknowledge that you're a king. Sorry, no, that you're a chief. Because that's also giving us a different perspective. Because for us, we're all about having conversations that enrich you as who you are. But the fact that a chief is royalty, as long as you know that you're royalty,
Exactly,
that's
indeed.
all we need. And you said Afro speculative? What?
African speculative fiction.
African speculative. What is? I can't even pronounce it. It's a mouthful. What is that? And what does that entail?
Okay, first, to differentiate it from Afro or any other speculative fiction, this is a branch of literature that comprises itself with works of horror, sci-fi, science fiction itself, fantasy, magical realism, fairy tales, going forth.
Right.
So, to differentiate from speculation, the general speculative fiction, it's the ones you find, the Stephen Kings,
Right.
the J.K. Rowlings, the Harry Potters, mainly by white people. And then you've got the Afro speculative fiction, which is a branch of the same kind of writings, but coming from the African Americans. And then you have African speculative fiction, which is the fiction coming from these same genres, but coming from Africa, talking about Africa, Africa's culture, traditions, superstitions.
Right.
Which you have writers like Nsah from South Africa. You have writers like Nedi Okorafor from Nigeria. Yes.
Right. Brilliant. Well, King, thank you, Chief. Thank you so much for that breakdown. And I have to be very honest. I was really, really excited when you reached out to us saying you'd like to review a book. And I had no idea what book it was, because you had just a melting pot of really different books that I mean, authors that have come in. We've had the Township Girls talking about their transition from Rhodesia, and the stories that happened during their time. We had Mbesa gathering the children, talking about, you know, all of her different experiences. Exactly. And congratulations to Queen Mbesa for winning an award for the book. We also had Moonchild Rai, who's also, you know, launching his book on the 27th. So when you sent me Do You Know Mbesa, I was like, okay. So for those of you that don't know, Undeniably African Book Club has got a guest book reviewer today, and the book we are reviewing is Nsah Mala's Do You Know Mbesa. Why did you choose this book in particular before to what the book is all about?
Okay, you see, this book, first of all, what really attracted me to it is the title.
Right.
Do You Know Mbesa? So, you know, for a person who doesn't really know where Mbesa is or how the Mbesa people live, it's sort of a question whereby you look at the book and like, what an awkward question. So what first attracted me to the book was the question, and then I got to get a copy of the book and read it. And what's phenomenal about it is it presents this minority group which is in Cameroon, its way of life, its culture, its religion, everything that a way of life, everything that happens there. And you know, it's something that for years I've been a student of history, and for years I've tried reading a lot of history texts, but I've never really come across this. So it came as something that was seminal, and I just told myself, no, the world needs to know these things, because already from the title, it's not only asking you, do you know Mbesa, but it's asking you, do you know Africa? Do you know your people?
Right.
Do you know your country? So that's what attracted me to the book.
Exactly. So the question attracted you to the book. What attracted me to the book was the image on the book. So for those of you that haven't seen it, please can you just dash quickly to our page. That's Undeniably African on Facebook and on Instagram, where we posted the photo of this book. And in Shona, it looked like a Chichigure.
Yes.
Which was somebody was like wearing like a sackcloth, and then had a mask, right? I was like, oh, I won't even lie. I was like, oh my God, Chigure. So, you know, for me, I was like, okay, well, hang on. And then last week we had an outside broadcast at Afrolux, and I was typing away, minding my business. Then there were 12 Jigure that appeared, and I was freaking out inside. But I was like, but why am I freaking out? And the thing is, the problem is we resist things that we don't know and we don't understand, because, you know, like you rightfully mentioned before we came in studio, a lot of things around Africa, our literature, our people, our customs have been demonized and perceived as backward, as, you know, scary, and as bad as really been tainted. But I'm just going to give our listeners an overview of the book, and then we're going to get, you know, right into it. So the book is broken down into a number of parts. I'm going to start just by naming what the outline of the book is, and the first part one is locating the Mbesa in space and time, where the Mbesa can be found and where they come from, what is the history of the Mbesa people. And the Mbesa, the author is actually Cameroonian, so this is some great history and geography. And part two dives into the social, political, and cultural life of the Mbesa, so focusing on their traditional administrative system. Africa's always had systems that have been functioning, FYI. Education and medicine and Mbesa, traditional rights, religious and social life of the Mbesa, and then, you know, the main traditional dishes of Mbesa. And then part three focuses on the economy of the Mbesa, and there's something that's called MADA, M-A-D-A, which is the engine of development in Mbesa: agriculture, trade, tourism, and chances of investment in Mbesa. Part four focuses on the problems hampering development in Mbesa: lack of good roads, electricity, unemployment, and the Coast Syndrome. And then there's also the princes, or Nchidas, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and it's conflict over the traditional calabash. But Chief, tell us a bit more about Do You Know Mbesa? What do you now know about Mbesa?
Well, I'd say a month ago, I had no idea who the Mbesa people are, the Mbesa culture, the Mbesa way of life. But now I can say, even though I haven't met them in the physical,
right,
but I can now safely say that I have loads of ideas of who are the Mbesa people, what is Mbesa. So yeah, from the overview you just gave, I'm just going to read the opening line from the book,
sure,
so that people get the whole sense of where or how do you locate the Mbesa people. So it reads that part 1, locating the Mbesa people in space and time. Where is Mbesa found? Mbesa is a village in Bello subdivision in Boyo division in the northwest region of Cameroon. She is found approximately 30 kilometers from Bello, the chief town of Bello subdivision, though she can also be reached through Oku and Din on seasonal earth roads. Mbesa is fondant and together with other fondants such as Minjang, Bekas, Ake, Ajang, Achain, the Baiso, the Com constitute the Com clan. Mbesa lies between longitude 5 and 35 north and longitude 10 and 22 south. She is both to the north of Din village in Noni subdivision and Bui subdivision, to the south of Lake Uku and Inja mountain forest, to the east of Oku village in Oku subdivision, and to the west of Ake in Fundong central subdivision and Boyo. I think from this you get a lot of subdivisions.
right.
Yeah, this is something. It also tells you something of the makeup of Cameroon itself, which happens to be currently a nation which is divided between the cultures, the language, the colonial administrations. So
right.
Mbesa is a small tribal village which is found in Cameroon. Like from where I've read, I think people get the actual geography.
Right.
So this is a small village which is from the people say that it was founded by a runaway prince. You remember back in actually African history itself, the fights between the kings, the chiefs. Your brother dies and someone else wants the throne, and you can't bear and you just run away. So the founder of the Mbesa people actually ran away to a place where, but I don't want to give spoilers.
Of course,
to get into detail of the book,
yes.
brushing through, he met actually a juju practitioner in this fatal place, whereby they just decided that we need to found our own village.
Right.
So from then on, he had his wives. So that's when they started the whole Mbesa village was actually born, and it stems to be a really cultural, superstitious people with varying degrees of a way of life. I don't want to give spoilers like I said, because if I go deeper, people won't actually want
it's no more review. People are like, well, why should we buy the book? We're sorted. Okay. So, Chief, right? So the one part that stood out for me is Mbesa, right? It sounds very heavy and super pregnant with meaning. And this is what they say. They said the word Mbesa is very pregnant with meaning. It is more meaningful than most of us know. Mbesa refers to a people, to a culture, to a locality, to a language and a way of life, all of which are unique and interconnected. Consequently, the concern of this book is not only the history of Mbesa, it also seeks to present Mbesa geographically, culturally, socio-politically, and economically in all her uniqueness. This makes the work significant in that it will contribute to the preservation and conservation of the social cultural life of Mbesa for present and future use, both in and out of Mbesa. Which I think is important, because like you rightfully said, when you're talking about the different subdivisions, when colonialism happened in Africa, the thing has been to divide and conquer. So we've got all of these invisible borders that are stopping us from doing trade or interconnectedness as a people.
Indeed.
So from your experience with Do You Know Mbesa, what similarities have you known, or what did you not know about yourself that made you think, if this is the Mbesa, what about us in Zimbabwe? How much do we really know about, certain practices and traditions in Zimbabwe?
Oh yeah. So when I was reading the cultural part, the way of life, I came across this really familiar events we do. I mean, the traditional. Allow me to say traditional
Right.
burying ceremonies when a person is deceased. We normally say after a year, tinoenda kunogoa hembe dzinenge dzagovewa, and then tinonorowa guva and whatnot. So when I was reading this, I came across such an instance whereby after a year, precisely after a year, they come back to celebrate the death of the deceased and actually welcome them back into the community, into the house. Right. They honor them. So it made me wonder that how much do I know about my own people, about my own self? I mean, for so many years, I've been inclined to the Eurocentric way of thinking. That tells me that whatever is African it's not proper, it's not right, it's demonic and whatnot. So I have tried so much to run away from it until it caught up with me and just told me that you can't run away from your shadow. So when I was reading You Know Mbesa, it brought a lot of questions about how much I know about my own culture, how much I know about my own people. Right. Zimbabwe so far has 16 official languages, and unfortunately I only speak one of them, which is Shona. And sometimes when I'm sitting across a person who speaks a different language, at the back of my mind I'm telling myself, this person is probably speaking a lot of junk. Why not just jump from your language, your native nonsense, we usually say, to English, that sort of ethnocentrism. So reading Mbesa, Do You Know Mbesa, asks you the fundamental question. Not only that, do you know Mbesa as a people, but do you know yourself as a people? Do you know your country? Do you know your culture? And if you do, how much of your culture do you know? How much of your culture do you appreciate? So reading this, I came across certain practices whereby when a woman gives birth out of wedlock, in Mbesa village, when a woman gives birth out of wedlock from a man who's not or they are not married, what happens is that the father adopts the child. Okay. The father of the woman adopts the child, and he gives the child his surname. So when that woman finally marries, be it to the man who impregnated her or another man, the man actually has to buy the rights of fathering. He adopts, but in the process of adopting, he buys the rights of being the father of the child. So during the bride the lobola ceremony, he pays certain dues to the father. The father then blesses him and gives him the go ahead to adopt the son or the daughter and they take out and take on the surname. So reflecting on our system here, I saw these differences. If someone if someone bears a child out of wedlock, there's a lot of discrimination that happens. We sort of demonize that person. We persecute them. In a way, instead of we acknowledge that it's a mistake that has already been done, but how do we rectify it? We actually don't. We sideline those people. At the end of the day, they no longer feel one with us. But looking at the Mbesa people, their cultural systems are holistic. They say we are one, and as we are one, we cannot possibly leave out one of ours. We acknowledge that, of course, they've made a mistake, but how do we move forward? Right. So Mbesa not only make you ask questions, but it also makes you reflect on your way of life as a people and how you should rectify some other things that are happening, and actually how you can move forward and embrace each other as individuals, because individuality is something that's lacking in Africa. That's why we demonize our own culture, because we have been taught to think in a horde kind of manner, whereby we are supposed to think in one kind of way. Right. If you see something that is not aligned to you, you sort of get defensive and get really violent.
That's true. Well, for those of you that are joining us for the very first time, you're listening to Undeniably African, and with us in studio is Chief Nyashadzashe Chikumbu, and we are reviewing Do You Know Mbesa, which is a book written by Cameroonian Nsah. A quick shout out to those of you that are joining us on our Facebook page. King Kane Guatiringa says, "Hi, good people. We hope you're well." Queen Juba Sibanda, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Thank you so much for joining us. Let us know where you are joining us from. We're going to get into a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to focus on the key points that you need to be aware of and how you can get to know more about who you are and what it is that you're actually known for as a people, because the time of not knowing who you are and whose you are is long gone.
Why the cameras all over me? Yo, I wear my own guns. Yo, I wear my own guns. I've got so many clothes like it's in my aunt's house. She looks fly. She looks fly. Yeah, I got on sneaks, but I need a new pair. Yeah. All the hits. Your hit music station.
No, 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 no. Oh, yeah. I'm in chains, you're in chains too. Our uniforms and you are uniforms too. I'm a prisoner, you're a prisoner too, Mr. J. Oh, I have fears, you have fears too. I'll die, but you self will die too. Life is beautiful, don't you think so too, Mr. Jailer? I'm talking to you, Jailer. Stop calling me a prisoner. Let him is 1,000 be the first to cast the stone, Mr. Jailer. Mr. Jailer, you suppress all my strategies. You oppress every part of me. What you don't know, you're a victim too, Mr. Jailer. Oh, you don't care about my point of view. If I die, another will work for you. So you treat me like a modern slave, Mr. Jailer. I'm talking to you, Jailer. Stop calling me a prisoner. Let him is 1,000 be the first to cast the stone, Mr. Jailer. Mr. Jailer. You see, if you walk in the marketplace, don't throw stones. Even if you do, you just might hit one of your own. Life is not about your policies all the time, so you better rearrange your philosophies. I be good to your fellow man. Stop calling me a prisoner. Let him is 1,000 be the first that cast the stone, Mr. Jailer. Oh, I'm talking to you, Jailer. Stop calling me a prisoner.
Oh, so sorry to have to cut that song in between. You know, before I became a radio presenter, I used to hate, you know how DJs would play a song. And song you're listening to, oh my gosh, like now I've become that person, and now I understand why, because you're trying to get as much conversation in as
Is
possible.
possible.
So for those of you that are joining us for the very first time, you're listening to Undeniably African. I'm the Queen, and with me is part of African royalty, and that is Chief Nyashadzashe Chikumbu. And we are reviewing Nsah Mala's Do You Know Mbesa, which is a book that is outlining the social, political, and economic lives of the Mbesa people found in Cameroon. And as always, each and every segment, we give our guests the authority to decide what songs we play for the segment, because these songs are either relevant to the body of work we are discussing, or they're just songs they really, really love. So, Chief, we started off the segment with Fire on the Mountain by Nsah. I think this is an Nsah Sunday. And we were just listening to Jailer, again by Nsah, and we're just talking about this queen and the thing she's saying. It's not just a feel-good song. When you hear it, it's like, wow, why did you choose those songs in particular?
Well, I bumped into Asha a very long time ago.
Okay.
So yeah, she's sort of an inspiration whenever I'm in that creative mood, which is almost every time.
Yes.
I'm always with my headphones and listening to her songs, because the songs are not only, like you're saying, a feel-good song, but they are profound. You know, they make you think outside of the box. I mean, step out of the box and actually analyze what kind of box is this? Why am I in it?
Right.
So, reading Do You Know Mbesa, and listening at the background, listening to Asha's songs, especially Jailer and Fire on the Mountain, I realized that one way or the other, they echo the same thing. In Fire on the Mountain, we are given a picture whereby fire is burning. It's burning the mountain. It's burning the landscape. And what is amusing about it is that the people are indifferent about it. They just look at it and just say, let it burn. But not only realizing at the end of the day that we are burning everything. We're burning our heritage. We're burning our own homes. So reading Do You Know Mbesa, it coming across, especially the cultural part, it highlighted that we are actually burning our own continent. We are burning our own people. How? We're being indifferent. Indifferent how? Indifferent towards our culture, indifferent towards other people's way of life. I mean, look at the way Mbesa has been for so long. Because it's a small minority, naturally people tend to just think that these are probably bigoted people because they stick to their culture, and we should not associate ourselves with them, especially the authorities. And at the end of the day, you're surprised to find out that actually in 2008, when we were battling, you know what,
right,
they had a civil war between the Mbesa people and the Fon people about the land distribution. The other half saying this is our land, and the other half saying this is our land, and 300 households were actually destroyed to dust. And because of this, you actually think that maybe someone else or the authorities or anyone in Africa could actually say something about it and see justice. But unfortunately, up until now, nothing has been done. People are still indifferent. So this Fire on the Mountain speaks volumes in the sense that it tells us that there's a lot we are burning in our continent, and we need to look back and see where we're burning. Do You Know Mbesa not only lights that light, but if you go on the internet and you Google the circumcision of females, you'll be surprised that a lot of thousands of women, young girls, actually die in Tanzania. There, and nothing is being done about it. But we have these activists, we have all these human rights leagues, but actually, which human rights are they fighting for when people's houses are being destroyed and they're not doing anything about it? So this song, in a way, and this book, they complement each other in the sense that they tell us we need to be conscious about who's surrounding us, what they're going through. Like you mentioned, back in the days, you used to hate it, when DJs would cut a song. But now you're in the place, you now understand that it's not just about the song, it's about getting the conversation into it. So it's not just about the culture, it's about understanding the people as a whole. Because if you understand the people's culture, in a way, you won't be antagonistic towards them. Whenever they behave in a way, you just understand this is how they are.
Right.
But things like racism, xenophobia, they are there because we fail to acknowledge the individuality of a particular people. So these songs, especially Jailer, when it says I'm in chains, you're in chains too, it speaks to the person who tells you that your culture is demonic, you should shy away from it. They're in chains in the sense that they don't see that it's their own culture they're trying to run away from. You can't run away from your shadow. You're not only destroying the person you're telling, but you're destroying a whole generation, your kids as a whole.
See, the thing is, now you're even speaking poetically, because I'm like, and then she goes on to say, what you don't know, you're a prisoner to.
Exactly.
Oh my God. You know what? We can go on and on about this. And I kind of want us to do, but you know what? We'll create time. Chief, thank you so much for taking time out and just breaking that up. Because, you know, sometimes it's overwhelming when you've got such an important conversation, an important thing that forces you to confront yourself. And not all confrontation is bad. And I think for our generation, the thing is, every generation goes through certain things, but every generation has got a responsibility.
Exactly.
I believe a non-negotiable responsibility. That's why you've got a lot of people that are indifferent because they don't know what their purpose is. They don't know what their responsibility is for them to be where they are. Some people went through sacrifices and realized that there was something that they needed to work towards or establish. So we hope that with these conversations and with books like Do You Know Mbesa, it plants a seed that, you know, will get generations moving. Because the thing is, if we don't, we'll erase ourselves, and that's not going to happen because this is why we're here. Chief, on Undeniably African, we refuse for anybody to leave without doing a shout out. I'm what would you could do? Don't do a shout out. Please, can you give us a shout out to some of you people, and then we'll call it a day as we get ready for our next guest.
Okay, I would actually like to shout out to two people. My friend Nkosiyazi Khan Kanjiri is in South Africa University, is social worker.
Okay.
Yeah, yesterday we had a very stimulating conversation concerning these things. So I'd like to shout out to him for stimulating a lot of thought. And also I'd like to give a shout out to my inspiration. She pushes me when I'm down. When I can't, you know, writers and creators, you often have this writer's block. So yeah, I would like to shout out to Blessing Ropofazo Mambo for being my driver. Whenever I'm low, she's there and she's always pushing me to go and break boundaries.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. And where can people access your work? Because I know that you also write and poet. How can people get in touch with you?
Okay, I usually post links to my published work on my social media platform. So on Facebook, it's Nyashadzashe Chikumbu. Okay. On Twitter, it's Nash the Poet. On Insta, it's Nash the Poet again. So yeah, people can just follow me, and I'll regularly update them on the progress of my work.
Well, Chief, thank you so much for taking time to join us, and we know that we also need to tap into your poetry as well. So we will call you back for an Undeniably African mic drop. I am the Queen, and you've been watching and listening to Undeniably African Book Club. I was about to say mic drop. Coming up next, we have Reigning in Africa, where we will be talking to neuroscience-based coach Queen Barbara Mutedzi, aka Coach B. But before she comes through, we're gonna play the last song. I'm gonna say bye, Facebook. The last song that Chief Nyashadzashe